So good afternoon and welcome. This afternoon, I'm in conversation with Dr. George Oliveira. So you're very welcome, George, and delighted to meet you. You might tell our viewers, what are you responsible for at University College Cork?
Okay, so I'm the head of School of Engineering, and so in terms of the programs, I'm ultimately responsible for all the undergraduate and postgraduate programs in engineering at the moment. Of course, that each program then has its own program director.
And what are the programs within the School of Engineering?
Well, maybe I would start with the entry point, which is the common first year in engineering. That's the CK600 code. And that's our entry point to all the undergraduate and integrated masters in 4 disciplines of engineering that we have. So from the common first year, the students at the end of the first year will go either to civil, structural, and environmental engineering, electrical and electronic engineering, energy engineering, or process and chemical engineering. And in these 4 disciplines, they then actually choose at the end of the 3rd year, if they just want to finish in a total of 4 years with the honors bachelor in engineering in that discipline, or then at the end of the 3rd year, they can decide to do 2 more years. And so it's a total of 5 years, but at the end, they come up with a master's. So they would have what we call an integrated master's in engineering in one of the disciplines.
And why would somebody choose to study engineering at University College Cork?
Well, I think that I could perhaps give 5 reasons, just one for each finger in my hand. First, UCC is in the top 2% of universities worldwide. And within engineering and technology, so we are an institution that's internationally recognized for world-class engineering education. Now, my second finger, we give students a good overview of all the disciplines of engineering in the first common year. So we actually believe that students will make a much more informed decision if they are exposed to this variety of employment profiles, the type of works that engineers do, the type of issues that they would be studying if they spend this first year with us. My third reason is that we have very strong relationships with the major employers in the region and elsewhere, even outside of Ireland. And we give the students an opportunity with the work placements to experience these employers. And there are some optional summer placements, but if you go all the way to the master's program, that's an 8-month work placement. So my fourth reason is that we're actually very proud that our 4 programs are developing integratedly. That is, we are a common school of engineering. So we are not electrical engineering with physics or chemical engineering with chemistry, something like that. We are all the engineers together. And this ability to reach out from a particular branch of engineering to all the others in a multidisciplinary sense is very important for the engineering of the future. And it gives much more flexibility to our graduates in terms of developing a career in a variety of different settings. And so finally, our programs are accredited by Engineers Ireland. That means that they are recognized in 2 different world areas. Within the European Federation of Engineering Associations, that's called FEANI, they are recognized as a degree of engineering anywhere in Europe. And that goes beyond the European Union, it's Europe as a whole. And within the Washington Accord, it means that they are also recognized in English-speaking countries. So the Washington Accord is essentially Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, some institutions in Mexico, and so on. So it's a very international qualification, if you like.
And obviously, the student doesn't have to decide on their course, the route that they're going to follow until after their first year.
Exactly. So they have the whole first year. We ask them what their intentions are, but they can change their mind until the very time of registration. Actually, this year, We had the student that wanted to change 2 weeks into the program. That's fine. They can do that. Half of the first year is actually composed of engineering modules. The other half are the maths and the physics, the foundation sciences. So we have a good grinding with labs and projects and visits and talks in all the disciplines of engineering. There are actually 5 disciplines, because mechanical engineering is also a discipline. And we have taught masters in mechanical engineering, but we don't have, at the moment at least, a pathway from undergraduate level. So the undergraduates are just the other 4.
So George, you mentioned the work placement opportunities. So can you elaborate a bit on those?
Yes, well, at first, if students want to, they would have support from Career Service to look for a summer placement at the end of the 2nd year. That's a possibility. Then there is an optional work placement in the BE program. So for the students who want to finish in 4 years, if they want, they can do a 3 months work placement in between the 3rd and 4th year. So that's an elective. If they don't want, they can choose something else. But if they do the integrated masters, then it is mandatory and it is compulsory, and it's an 8-month work placement. The work placements are normally salaried, and the careers office does actually an excellent job in organizing this. It's a very professional thing. The students get the coaching on how to write CVs, how to perform in job interviews. Then the companies will come. Well, they used to come to UCC, now it's remote, but the companies will have interviews with the candidates that they selected. And then as a result of that interview, they will offer a position to the student. So effectively, the student then becomes part of an engineering team. He has a salary from the company, or he or she, and will, at the end of the work placement, feel very much integrated in the workplace. Some students never leave the company, so they continue their course in the ME, for instance. There is then a dissertation, and there are spin-offs from the work placement to the dissertation. So they continue in a project linked to the company, or then they just continue to work part-time or to have some attachment to the companies. At the moment, that is fairly strong because the industries around us are short of qualified pairs of hands. And so they're quite happy to have students, and if they're happy with the students, to grab onto them so that they don't go somewhere else. So it's a competitive market at the moment.
And George, can you give us an example of some of the companies who take our students for those modules?
Yes, well, we have different types of companies, as you can guess, because of the 4 different areas of qualification. So in civil, structural, and environmental engineering, you have construction companies, obviously, project management companies. Project management actually is one of the biggest employers in Cork. And also in the biogas and environmental areas. And through that, even Cork County Council and Cork City Council would be employing some of our graduates. In the electrical and electronic engineering area, there is the traditional power type like ESB, but there are all those microelectronics companies like Analog Devices, Qualcomm, and I cite 2 of these companies. It's not my area, but as head of school, I know how much they've been contributing to the school very generously, sometimes, with sponsorship and with the donations and with teaching, giving lectures for free that we have in companies like that. For process and chemical engineering, the biggest employer is the pharma and biopharma sector. So you have the Pfizers and the Eli Lillys and Biomarines and almost all the companies, Merck, I hope none of them will be upset that I'm not mentioning them, but we have in Ireland something like 9 of the 10 biggest multinationals are here. The food sector is also an employer of some of our graduates, particularly in the beverage business. Spirits and beers and things like that. We also have an oil refinery in Cork Harbour, so we would also find some of our graduates there. But the main interest of most of our students actually is the pharma and biopharma that is very vibrant at the moment. In energy, you have, although it's called energy degree, mostly it's about renewable energy. So that's the biggest interest. It's not energy as in oil. There we have renewable energy companies as well. Believe it or not, there are actually companies in Ireland selling solar panels. But the biggest source of renewable energy, as you can see out there, are the wind turbines and offshore, which is one of the main interests at the moment. And also we have quite some activity with the marine energy. So that's waves, essentially. So it's a very varied portfolio of companies.
So George, the students obviously have a huge opportunity of interacting with so many companies. Can you speak for a moment on the research that they might be exposed to in the School of Engineering at UCC?
Yes, well, in terms of research, I would actually like to mention the research centers. None of the research centers are, the School of Engineering has a research center. They are UCC multidisciplinary research centers. Some of them started out of the School of Engineering years ago, but most of them will involve other schools and other areas. But we have very strong activity in some of them. The first one, perhaps I would mention, is the Tyndall National Institute. It was once called the National Microelectronics Research Center, and they have world-class facilities. It is one of the I would say it's one of the main research centers in the whole of Europe in all the area of nanotechnologies, nanofabrication. They actually have a nanofabrication unit. And there are more researchers in Tyndall than in the School of Engineering. And a good number of my colleagues are principal investigators in Tyndall, and some of the students will be based there. In the area of telecommunications and power and microelectronics, our faculty, as it was at the time, is the Marine and Renewable Energy Institute, or MARAI, which is actually part of the Environmental Research Institute. So there are actually 2 separate buildings, one for the Environmental Research Institute and then specifically for marine research. In the Marine Research Institute, which is a purpose-built building in Ringaskiddy, you have the biggest tank for simulating waves in Europe. So again, world-class, really top-class facilities that we have. The building of the Environmental Research Institute is a living building, is an experimental building, if you like. We have also a small but very interesting research center called the Infant Research Center, which is actually housed in Cork Maternity Hospital, where we have some of our colleagues in electronics and electronic devices that are cooperating with medicine to develop systems for following neonatal babies. So the variety of things that we have in engineering is quite interesting. And we see that this type of multidisciplinary approach is a lot of the future of the critical developments will be like that. So where engineering is part of something, solving part of the problems. Now, in addition to that, of course, we also have quite a bit of research overall in the sustainable area, including sustainable processing, carbon capture, green processes more associated with chemical engineering. And of course, I have to mention food process engineering because I'm a food engineer myself, and I love the fact that I can eat the result of my experiments.
If you think of when you're pursuing a degree in engineering at UCC, what employability skills? We talk about curricular content, co-curricular, and extracurricular. Do you offer the whole array?
Well, in terms of extracurricular, we rely on the students' union and the students' societies, like the engineering society. And we used to have societies for the different degrees, and chemical engineering society and the civil engineering society, whatever. Now we have a common engineering society that organizes a variety of events. The students will participate in some of these events together with engineering students of other universities, like there is a sports, or used to be a sports tournament, and things like that. And that's interesting. So for extracurricular activities, we incentive that. Of course, there are a lot more societies in the university. And I like to adapt a quote from a Portuguese doctor that became a very famous novelist and writer. And I adapt it to engineering. If an engineer only knows about engineering, he doesn't even understand what engineering is about. So it's very important that the students have an opportunity in a place like UCC to have the hill walking society or the photography society, or the various things that allow them to develop a rounder type of personality, if you like. So we do incentive that, and UCC is very good in this organization.
I was going to say, George, it's almost like the graduate attributes. When you're talking about a university college course, prides itself on the graduate attributes program, critical thinking, values of respect, all of that.
Yes, that is.
So the student being exposed to all these different clubs and societies equips them more broadly and holistically for the world, not only for the world, but also the world of work.
That is very important. And actually, in our profession in engineering, one of the elements of accreditation that, we have accreditation processes from Engineers Ireland, and in one case also from the Institution of Chemical Engineers of the UK. And they look for the maths and the physics and the engineering design and so on, but they also look at ethics and communication skills, ability to communicate with the non-experts, for instance. So all our programs are supposed to show to external examiners how we offer opportunities and how we grind a little bit our students in the development of those facets, of those attributes.
And what do the employers say about our graduates?
When they go to industry, they really work hard. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have students that first and foremost show a good work ethic. And that is one of the most important things that employers look for. Employers look for personalities that are easy to work with. And of course, that they expect that there is a foundation of science and technology that comes with it. But without that type of personality, of team working attributes, the employers would be able to do very little with them. So I think that our students over the years have been really very good and very committed to when they work in industry. And that creates a good impression in the employers. I also think that they regard UCC graduates compared to some others as people that have an ability to conceive things a little bit out of the box when necessary, to be a bit more creative and imaginative. So it's not just that they know what buttons to touch, but also that they can, if necessary, put more of their own thinking and their own creativity and innovation into the pot. So I think that overall, the mix of multidisciplinary expertise and holistic approaches that we have in UCC as a university is working quite well with the students that we have.
And do we involve third parties, external people, employers, community groups, so on, in delivering our courses, in giving guest lectures?
Yes, we
Advisory
do,
groups?
and that is actually common in engineering. So it's one of those things that also looks good when you go for accreditation in Engineers Ireland, that the students have as lecturers at least a few practicing engineers, as they call them. And so in all the courses, we have examples of that. So we have part-time lecturers who are working in industry, but the students typically react well to having some practicing engineers giving some lectures. And we have some as part-time lecturers, but we also have some that actually are teaching for free in civil engineering and in electronic engineering. They give part or even a total number of lectures in a module.
There's a lot of actually, I suppose, philanthropic and altruistic interactions between the School of Engineering and employers and just third parties in general. And that's to be lauded and welcomed and encouraged.
Yes, I would like to recognize that. And although I've been in Ireland for 21 years, I haven't been here always. And what I see in the way that the companies deal with even work placement and that they deal with university and the students is in a very Irish concept of what the community is. And they regard, when they receive a student, they regard their obligation to contribute to the education and qualification of that student. So they feel that they are our partners in making sure that we deliver graduates that understand better how industry works and how people work in a professional environment. So I would regard them as actually as our educational partners. We don't have a lot of graduates at the end of the day. And the demand at the moment is very strong. So there is also an interest in giving a good image of the company to all these students, because you will want to have the best ones to work for your company in a few years' time. So I think that there is a mix of being proud that their particular company is associated to UCC and that they are contributing in that way. And there is a sense of personal responsibility in what they do. So it's a delight.
What is the employability rate of our graduates?
So it's 93% within 6 months, according to the surveys. Sometimes they go to the US, they go to Australia, and we lose track.
So can you think of any unusual careers? We can understand to a certain extent the career of an engineer. Can you think of any unusual careers other than engineering that some have taken up?
Well, I remember one of the graduates of chemical engineering, a female graduate of chemical engineering, maybe about 8 or 10 years ago. When she graduated, she went to the City of London to work as a broker. Now, if I look a little bit further down, I find Rowan Atkinson, who became very famous as Mr. Bean, is an electrical engineer. So we have, I think, if the memory serves me right, Margaret Thatcher as well. So you can go into careers in politics as well. But mostly the graduates start mostly in engineering. And then a good number of them deviate to managerial posts. Like we have a former alumnus who's now a vice president in Intel in the US.
I was reading at some point that of all the degrees most featured at CEO level, it's actually engineering. Others might think, it was naturally business or so on, but it was engineering. And I suppose the ability to think critically and methodically and rigorously.
Yes,
and all those other skills that we inculcate help to become a CEO ultimately.
Yes, I think so. I think it's two things. It's that quantitative ability, especially in these days of data analytics and so on. And it's also that in some businesses, when you go through the factory floor first, then you understand more what's happening and what it is that you are taking decisions on. So it also helps in that regard.
And to conclude, George, are there any myths about engineering that you'd like to dispel?
Yes, that engineers are boring people.
Okay.
That engineers can't appreciate life because their mind is in the middle of technology. So I would like to dispel that myth.
And any fun facts about studying engineering at UCC?
The city is largely dominated by the students when they are here. And that creates a student life that when I look at some of the students that I get for internships from France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, they all love this student life that they find in UCC. So I think that's perhaps the best fun fact is the student life in UCC seems to be very good. I wish I had it.
And on that lovely note, George, I want to thank you very much for the delightful conversation and to thank you, the listeners, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Employability and career development initiatives are delivered through curricular, co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Over 90% of our programs offer placements internationally and nationally. Throughout your time in UCC, you will have the opportunity to develop employability skills through entrepreneurship modules, skill sessions, and memberships of clubs, societies, becoming a class representative, and getting involved. Throughout your student journey, Ucc Career Services will support your career planning with one-to-one career consultations and coaching. The Career Services collaborate with academic departments and other UCC units to deliver bespoke and standalone employability and career-related workshops and events for all students and recent graduates. Our annual recruitment fair is one of the largest national career fairs, featuring up to 100 top graduate employers. For more information about UCC employability initiatives and the Career Services, visit ucc.ie/careers.